at Bankster17 on Twitter, and Bankster_DFS on Instagram, but we don't have anything up there yet. We're working on it. Welcome. Thank you guys for coming, checking out the Week 10 Live Before Lock. We are heading into an interesting week. Once again, every week there's got to be something, right, guys? Every single week we've got something else that's going to make this harder than it needs to be. Sometimes it's COVID. We've been COVID-free for the most part this week. Everyone who's on the COVID list is not on the COVID list, which is great. But we've got weather today. We've got a lot of weather today. Weather issues in Jacksonville, weather issues, Cleveland, Houston, weather issues, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. So, yeah, if you wanted to stack a game today, it's probably got some weather issues. Maybe not. That's not completely true. Not completely true, right? We've still got the Rams game with the Seahawks. We've still got the Cardinals and Bills. So we've got games we could stack. But, boy, 3 of the bigger games on the slate. Cincy, Pittsburgh, Houston, Cleveland, Jacksonville, Green Bay. Let's talk about those games. Let's talk about the weather on those games. Right now, weather is going to be wrong. Before we do that, though, hey, if you have questions, make sure you jump in on chat. Throw the questions in chat. We'll answer them live on the air. And make sure you check out banksterdfs.com/subscribe. $3.99 a week gets you access to everything we do, all the sports we cover, articles, player pools, and the best Slack chat in the business. We got guys in the Slack chat right now answering your questions, doing what we do. But back to the weather games today. Good gracious, folks. Oh, my goodness. Let's pull this up, and yikes. Houston, Cleveland, winds 30-plus miles per hour with potential for 50-mile-per-hour gusts. Snow, garbage, awful, swirling. That's one of the things, too. Some swirling winds. It's just can't play the passing game. We cannot play the passing game in Cleveland, Houston. This game, I believe, started with a 54-point total and is now sitting at, I believe it's under 45 now. Total's gotten pretty low on this game. You can't play the quarterbacks. You can't play the receivers. You probably can't play the tight ends, which you can't talk to Gouda. What's up, big Gouda?
Hey, how's it going? Sorry I'm late.
It's all life happens, man. Life happens. We're talking about how you just can't play anyone in the Cleveland-Houston game, in the passing game. But I think that makes the running backs a strong option. Nick Chubb has not just moved into my cash lineup. He's become like a cash lock for me. He is part of my cash core. I'm not worried about the workload. I think Kareem Hunt's great for a GPP. I think he's going to go under-owned, and I think you're going to see a lot of running for these guys. Cleveland wants to run the ball anyway. So now they're going to get to. And your boy Dookie, Gouda. Dookie seems like Dookie has definitely moved into my, not core, but my cash plays. I've moved him off of the GPP list onto the cash plays. I think if you want for Mike Davis and you have the $1,000, I have Duke's there. CJ Procise was called up to the active roster. And I think he'll get some work. I do. I don't think Duke's getting 85% of the touches, 90%, whatever he had last week. He'll probably get 55, 60%. But in a game like this, that could still be 20 carries. If they run the ball 40 times and he gets half of it, it's 20 carries. So I feel good about that. I feel like we're in a good spot. What's your thought on this game? Can we play any of the pass catchers in this game? I mean, any of them? Austin Hooper, are any of them in play for you?
I do have some exposure only because, because you're talking about, some playmakers. Like I've got some exposure to Fuller. I do have some exposure to Deshaun Watson. Again, in GPPs, when you get this type of situation, things happen. And, when you can get a guy like Watson that's going to be severely under-owned because of some of the matchups the other quarterbacks have, I think it's a good opportunity. With how bad Houston's defense is, if Cleveland gets up 10 or 14 points, Houston won't have an option but to throw the ball. So some exposure to Watson. And again, Fuller, because Fuller's the type of guy that can take a 5-yard screen or a 5-yard slant, to the house. He's got that type of skill. So I think he's good to have as some exposure. But other than that, the Cleveland side, no. I have some Austin Hooper just because he's cheap and he fits, and tight ends are viable for like that 5-yard touchdown reception or things like that. So I think Hooper makes some sense. But other than that, I'm not touching anybody on the Cleveland pass end. I've got no Mayfield, no Higgins, no Landry. I'm keeping it, cut and dry, Chubb and Hunt, and then a little bit of Hooper mixed in where I need that where I need that tight end play basically in his price range, and that's kind of where I'm sticking at. I do love Nick Chubb in this game. I spoke about it on Friday, how I feel with him, and even stacking him and Hunt in the same lineup given the weather conditions and all that. Even without the weather conditions, if it was a normal weather day, I think they'd still be very viable as a GPP stack. I'm personally not using Chubb in cash, nor am I going there. I definitely see the route for it, and it makes sense. And if you have that feeling on Chubb, definitely go for it. But I do have the preference of, on that same price range, I do have the preference of James Conner. Nobody's going to be on Conner this week. This sets up perfectly for Pittsburgh at home, 7-point favorites against a Bengals offense that is not, they're making improvements, but they're not great. They still have major O-line issues, which is going to be great for the Pittsburgh defense. And the Bengals defense, stinks. Let's call it what it is.
Pretty much.
And Connor should have no issue there, running the ball and everything. And in these types of games, we were let down last week because Pittsburgh forgot to show up in the first half, and the Cowboys actually kept it close. But I think at home in a division game, after what they did last week, I don't think Pittsburgh is going to fall into that same trap. And and even on GPP, this is a great week to have Connor because again, he's going to be low owned. The people are going to have that taste in their mouth from last week of how bad Connor screwed them, where he's going to be under owned. And I think we get the game for Connor that we were thinking last week. We get it this week.
I'm actually that guy. I'm one of those guys. Connor is in my cash pool, but I'm just not playing him. I got him in GPPs, and I thought about him in cash, but I prefer Chubb just because I just think that's the MO for this Cleveland offense with the wind. But Pittsburgh's a wind game too now, and so the passing is going to be a struggle. But I feel like Tomlin likes to get cute a little bit with Snell, McFarland, bubble screens and jet sweeps with Ray McLeod and Chase Claypool. I worry about that with Connor just enough where, because there's a viable alternative in my mind with Chubb, that's where I'm heading in cash. Getting back to this Cleveland game for a second, very little has changed about my exposure to Cleveland because I was a passing game regardless. Hooper for sure was a cash option. I've moved him out of cash option. So I was able to, after, if you watched the video yesterday, my 30 video, those who watched it, and I was trying to get up to Evan Ingram and I couldn't. And then about 3 hours after the video, I was like, I could go from Cooper Kupp to Robert Woods, which I'm perfectly happy with. And I could go up from Goddard to Evan Ingram. Austin Hooper was going to be my cash game. Tight end in that situation. I don't feel comfortable doing it. The real change for me has come from the Houston side. Again, I do agree with the passing offense. Look, we saw what Davante Adams did a couple of weeks ago in the wind. He caught a lot of short passes, but was able to get in the end zone. And Will Fuller is a touchdown machine. He's this team's Davante Adams. Not the same volume, probably not even the same talent level, but they are going to look for him. So I do think GPP-wise, sure, you could run back a little bit with Will Fuller. And if I'm playing a single game show on FanDuel, they have a single game showdown. I've got Watson simply because he's going to probably run around a lot and, agree that I think they're going to have to throw. Their underdogs anyway, and they may have to try to throw. Even if it's short dump-offs, there's a good chance to accumulate points there. But in cash, I'm staying away from the passing game. It's going to be all that running. We did say we would continue talking. I did talk about all the wind games. We've got Green Bay, Jacksonville. Similar issue, 30-ish mile per hour, 20 to 30 mile per hour winds with gusts into the 40s. Again, potential for swirling winds. Aaron Rodgers is a good quarterback with a rocket arm, so the wind's not going to bother him as much. But we saw that ADOT go way down in the Minnesota game when the wind was swirling. Yep. He just happens to have – he has Davante Adams who can do a lot of things. I'm not playing them in cash, though. I can't play them in cash. I've gotten completely off the Jaguars run backs on this game. I actually had 10% Luton this week on 150 lineups, and I changed all of that exposure to Daniel Jones. I got rid of the entire – Jacksonville passing offense and GPPs, but I did pick up a bunch of James Robinson because I do think they're going to have to run. And I think if Jacksonville can try to slow the game down, it's going to help. I am off Davante Adams in cash simply because of what happened with that wind game 2 weeks ago. He had 3 touchdowns. He had 30-odd points, but he needed 3 touchdowns to get there. If he only scored 2 touchdowns, he actually missed value that week. Like the fact that you need 3 touchdowns, we always say, don't pick a player for cash who's very touchdown dependent, and generally Davante Adams isn't. He is a volume guy. I mean, last week had 30 points just on volume. That's awesome. That's what I'm looking at. There's no win. Davante Adams was a cash play for me. He was a lockdown guy, but I'm not going to do that in the win because 7 for 53. It's a nice amount of volume, but the yards weren't there. And again, needed those 3 touchdowns. I'm not going to count on 3 touchdowns in cash when I could pivot down to a Keenan Allen, a Terry McLaurin, someone like that. Now, I've thought about using Aaron Cash. I think he'll get the workload, but Jamal Williams is going to play. I don't trust Aaron Jones in cash. I talked about the cash game video. When has Aaron Jones been a good cash game play? He has 2 games over this year, which is what he needs. And he's a lot like he doesn't get a ton of carries. And when he does, he doesn't get a ton of yards. He's just not a 100-yard running back. And I know not everyone is, but even with his target volume, it's not in him where he's on volume alone going to get you 17, 18 points. He is a little touchdown dependent, and his usage goes up in this game. But I think you're better off going with the James Conner or a Nick Chubb, and we like Miles Sanders for sure in cash. I don't think we need to use Jones. Full transparency, of 150 lineups that I made, I have 50% Aaron Jones. He's in 75 of my lineups. I love him as a tournament option. He's very expensive on FanDuel. I do it on FanDuel because we've talked about this, but the lineup builder I use it's not great for DraftKings, but it's great for FanDuel in terms of giving me the options I want. And when I do that on player pool, and I kind of set my percentages, and I love Aaron Jones. He's overpriced, I think, a little bit on FanDuel, and I think he's going to ownership down. And I've just got a ton of them. I also, and I don't love this as much, and I just didn't feel like going back and figuring 150 lineups. I have 47% Devon Adams, but he's got that game. He's going to get the volume, and if he does get in the end zone, he's going to be a great tournament play. Can't use him in cash. If you're doing a single game showdown in this game, there are rumors coming out of Green Bay that they're going to try to get Mercedes a touchdown against his former team. And look, it didn't work out for Le'Veon Bell. But if you're playing showdown slate and you want Adams and you want maybe you want Rodgers in this showdown slate because he will throw a little bit, and you want Williams and Aaron Jones, I mean, you got to save money somewhere. Mercedes Lewis is a player that we can do that with, because I do think that low A-dot's there, especially if it's a 1-yard kind of a dinker for a touchdown and a showdown, that could work. But I've moved all exposure from this game in cash and in tournaments. I've gotten rid of every piece of Jacksonville aside from James Robinson. What are your thoughts? Anything different on this game?
Well, I really love Aaron Jones this week. I'm just like you, heavily invested in him this week. I've got a lot of exposure. I am, the one difference, I am comfortable having him in my cash lineup. I have no doubt that the volume will be there. You're spot on with his weekly workloads, and and sometimes he can be a little touchdown dependent, but to be honest, I thought this game was going to be pretty high scoring to begin with, and now with potentially a little less passing, or if they are going to run it more, or if they do just control it because Jacksonville is not that good, I think the volume will be there for Jones. Just take into account, look at last Thursday. Coming off of his injury, they said he was going to be a little limited. His workload might be, a little bit less than usual, and he had 20 touches. 20 touches in a game that they pretty much controlled from the opening whistle. Now, the total output was a little, left a little bit to be desired. He only ended up with 12.9 points on those 20 touches, but still, it was a lot of earlier touches. They didn't have the opportunities to get him in the end zone and all that. But if he's getting 20 touches consistently, especially in a game like this, I mean, the touchdowns will come. I don't think he's going to have a 3.9 yards per carry average like he did against San Fran. Even his reception totals, he had 5 catches, but only 21 yards. If you're getting that 20 touch output from a guy like him, it's very rare that you're going to see yardage totals like that on 20 touches. If you look back to, last time he had 20 touches in week 4 against Atlanta, similar sort of thing. His total, on the 20 touches, his total yardage output ended up being 111 yards. I think that's a little more comparable than what the San Fran game was. So, 5 catches, 111 total yards. You're talking about 16 points. Now, you're not quite getting to that 3X, but he's also not killing you at that point either, and that's a pretty safe floor. And if you throw in the touchdown, now you got 22 points. You're not looking as bad there. So I think that's something to look at with Jones and what to consider. And in the same token, too, we were we were looking at Davante Adams for cash and a 9,000 price tag. For the guy to hit 3x on that, you're looking at 8 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown. That's a massive, massive game just to reach your normal value. So when you look at Jones on the flip side, well, if you like Adams in that scenario of the Packers handling them pretty easily, well, can't you make the argument then that Jones at 7,100 with an easier route to touches, only because it's a handoff versus needing to catch a pass, that you'd have that same likelihood of getting to that 3x at such a smaller price in a game that they could control. So that's kind of my view on that one. And also too, just because of the talent that Green Bay has, I do have some stacks of Rodgers, Jones, and Adams. Just again, if it's like it was against Minnesota, where where Rodgers still approached 300 yards, and you had Davante Adams with 3 touchdowns, only 5 catches for 70 yards. Yeah, you still could see those kinds of outputs even with the potential bad weather. But the same token, I'm not taking that type of risk in cash, but I will take that in GPPs, especially if we can get those guys at lower ownership, because everybody's got the same mindset and is getting a little afraid of it.
I'm for sure. And I was looking at my pool. I was going to come and go, well, I do have Aaron Jones in my cash pool. I don't. So I have my one-offs in G. But of all the guys, if you look at every I have in my one-offs and GPPs, the one guy that I feel pretty comfortable moving over. So I don't disagree with anything you're saying. Not in my personal cash lineup, but I do agree that he's a guy that you can absolutely put in cash, and the touches are there. Just to touch on the Davante Adams thing, I do think 12,000 was a lot of money, but I played the Davante Adams plus Mike Davis game, $13,000 and 39 between the two of them. That felt more reasonable than going, I need 27 from Adams. It kind of I justified very heavily. And that's what I do.
Well, I was just gonna say that's a smart way to look at it, only because when you get that type of discount on a guy like Mike Davis, and we know the anticipated workload, it makes plays like a $9,000 Davante Adams make sense.
Absolutely. One of the other game we were going to talk about is Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, and how apropos to bring in Sean Goodwin, big number 55, our very own Dirty Slot. Hey, Sean.
What's up, fella?
And the reason I say it's apropos is because one of Sean's favorite-time NFL players is celebrating a birthday today, along with my wife. Happy birthday, honey! I love you. That was odd. It's Tyler Boyd. It's Tyler Boyd's birthday today, and can we use Tyler Boyd today? I'm going to let Sean and Gouda talk about that. I'm going to take my stead for a couple minutes and let you guys talk about some slot plays. Sean, take it away, buddy.
What's going on, guys?
Hey.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd's birthday. Yeah, that's who knew, right? And a happy birthday to Mrs. Shane.
Yes.
I don't know. The weather in Pittsburgh is. I mean, Tyler Boyd in the slot should be all right. I've come down a little bit on him just because of the wind's going to be ugly, and Pittsburgh's defense. I don't know. I think they're going to be. I don't know. I've come down on. I know it's shocking, but I've come down on Boyd a little bit. I don't know. I just think when you got other like Sterling Shepard, Kupp, Lockett, Allen, Samuel. I think they're just, for me, as much as this hurts me to say, they're sort of over Boyd for me right now. I mean, I think Pittsburgh's defense is going to be in Burrow's face all day long. The weather. Oh, I don't know. Did you guys talk about this game yet, or you're just about to?
No, we hadn't gotten to it. We talked about the first 2 weather games, and then we were going to start, but we had you coming in, and it kind of just worked in perfectly with the Tyler Boyd angle. I mean, my view on this with it is, I mean, a guy like Boyd, you can probably still trust in your GPP lineups. Again, like you said, not as high as exposure if there wasn't issues. But Boyd should be okay. I mean, if Pittsburgh controls it like the betting line and just the kind of narrative on the game suggests, and kind of hold strong, you're probably going to see Burrow still throw it 35 times, but maybe more dink and dunk and shorter passes, and that works into Boyd's favor. I do believe.
For sure. Yeah, no, it should be. Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to get it out quick. So I mean, it just screams for Boyd. Yeah, I mean, there's AJ Green and T Higgins, and those guys are pretty much off the board now.
Yeah, I think those guys have more issues.
Yeah. I mean, even Juju on the other side, right? Like you could, run into, toss, as we're talking about the slot. I mean, weather's the same for Pittsburgh. I mean, it screams James Conner all day long, but
yeah,
I mean, Juju, same thing, right? Like, I mean, is he gonna be chucking it to Deontay and Claypool outside, or I mean, what are we talking? Like 50-mile-an-hour gusts going on in Pittsburgh, I think it is, right? Sustained
yeah.
20.
If you're getting that high, yeah. I mean, dump offs to Juju and maybe a little Ebron, and that's kind of it in the passing game, I would think.
So, I mean, Juju. I mean, Juju is obviously an option as well. I mean, targets all day long.
Yeah.
I mean, all this weather's killing all the games we want to stack. It sucks.
I know. Now we got to take some of the other games, get a little creative with some one-offs or some other plays there. So that's going to be interesting. But yeah, what else aside from that? What else do you have for us? Off of the Dirty Slot article, what are you liking? What are you looking at?
Love Curtis Samuel. I think Curtis Samuel is an amazing pivot off Mike Davis and GPPs. And we talked about it on the Friday. I love the Fournette Samuel do a double stack there. I also ran a Brady Godwin stack. Godwin was close. He was close to making the article. I didn't get him in just because his finger and everything. I don't know. Are they going to force it to AB? Like Brady, like you mentioned it on Friday, like Brady might to justify AB, and they got shellacked by the Saints.
Yeah,
maybe he's feeding AB 15 targets today just to say, hey, this was the right move. We didn't screw it up. I still ran a Brady Godwin stack just because I don't think anybody's going to run that like at all.
Yeah. Oh no, it's gonna be very low. And I do have to say, I when the week started, when I saw Godwin's price at 6,000, I was pretty floored because at 6,000, that's such a cheap price for Godwin. But that's the thing. We have no idea what this is going to look like now with AB there and who the main guy is and all that. I mean, personally, I think the odd man out is going to be Mike Evans, just because we've seen even before Brown, when Godwin and Evans were both healthy, Evans was the odd man out with just them two around. And I think now with AB there, you're going to see Evans kind of even more the odd man out, maybe like the deep shot kind of guy once or twice a game. But I think Evans is in some trouble here.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. We were talking about Evans chirping in the offseason about who was he chirping with? He was chirping with Keenan Allen, wasn't it? About the
oh yeah.
And Evans has become an afterthought, and Allen's getting targeted, 40 times a game. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, maybe just,
with some of these guys, I know sometimes silence is better, but hey, that's what they do, right?
Yeah. I mean, I love Curtis. Sterling Shepard is another guy that I'm really high on this week. I think the Giants are going to have to be chucking it. Danny Dimes is all kinds of ugly. Like, I mean, he could throw a pick six as much as he could throw, like it's gross. But
yeah,
I love Shepard. He's I mentioned, in the dirty slot, I kind of put my theory out there is about how Danny Slayton he's not getting what he got getting the targets because Danny doesn't have the time to go through the progressions, and he's got that happy feet. He's got that I got to get the ball out of here because I'm about to get smashed again for the 900th time this season. So it's Ingram and Shepard all day long for me. Finally, they're figuring out Ingram, but I love Sterling.
Yeah. So
Sterling Shepard for sure.
So Sean, let me ask you, because I know during the week it was trending in a different direction, but Golden Tate is actually active today. Does that cause any concern for Shepard, or are you okay with that because of the issues Darius Slayton will probably have with Darius Slay?
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer that Tate wasn't playing. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, that's sort of a surprise actually with everything that was going on with Joe Judge. I mean, he's old school. I'm surprised Tate's going to see the field.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe Joe Judge is going to have Tate on special teams covering kicks. Maybe he's going to do coverage, right? I don't know.
Maybe. I mean,
Tate's just not. He's not a well-liked player anyway. He rubs every teammate wrong. Stole Russell Wilson's wife, all that good stuff. So those kinds of things. He's a real locker room leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's shocking that he's active. I gotta say it's shocking. But you know what? Sterling Shepard's only $5,000, right? Like if Sterling Shepard was like 6 or 6,500 and Tate was, but I still think Sterling Shepard is going to get his. Ingram's going to get his. They're going to have to throw it probably 35 times in this game because Philadelphia, I would assume, is going to get up early, right? So you know you got your Sanders, Shepard, whatever which way you want to run your stacks kind of scenario, but. Yeah, it'll be. I'm gonna watch that game. I'm gonna make sure I have that game on a little bit. I'd love to see Tate covering punts or something like that. That'd be awesome.
I love stacking this game. We talked about it on Friday. I have far too much of this game than I should.
Well,
but I think especially within the early slate, within the early slate with Green Bay, Jacksonville, Houston's viable, you're really just competing against Washington, Detroit, Tampa, Carolina, which I think will carry more ownership. I just don't see anyone use, especially because if you want to use Giants in Philly, you're going to leave 3 on the table, which is a great way to be contrarian. You don't need to leave $4,000 on the table, but you can stack this game. You could still get Aaron Jones and Terry McLaurin and whatever. If you throw Mike Davis into that lineup, which I'm not necessarily saying you have to, but you can put Nick Chubb, but you could still have like $1,000 sitting on the table. To me, that's a great way to go with this game.
Yeah, Mike Davis at 6,700 in that early slate might be the easiest fade ever. Like $6,700 for Mike Davis on the early slate. Thank you, DK.
Oh yeah, that's unbelievable that they did that.
That's out of the player. That's out. That was easy.
Yeah.
Awesome. I was like, thank you very much. The funny thing is,
it's wild that they do that.
People are still going to play him, because he's going to be the guy. I'm like, yep, you go ahead and play him at $6,700. That's fine.
He could pay off at 67, but I'm surely not playing him at 67.
Sure, he could just through volume, maybe, but he could just as easily bust at 6,700 and then kill your lineup because you have to pay down somewhere else now, right? Because you paid that $6,700. But that's it. And for me. The usual suspects: Tyler Lockett, Cooper Kupp for sure, Danny Amendola with Galladay out again. The slight concern is if Detroit gets up, they'll start running it, but. It's not like Detroit's defense is any good either. So, Washington should be able to score. McLaurin should be able to have a monster day. McKissick, we were talking about, get fed all day long out of the backfield. So, Amendola, at $3,900 doesn't have to do too much. He was targeted, I think it was 10 times last week, 70 yards or so, 14 points, $3,900, lock and load.
Absolutely. And as we were talking, I threw together what we can do on an early slate. If you're early slate, this is what you can do if you stack the Giants game. You've got Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, you've got McLaurin, you've got Miles Sanders. Good early slate. That's a good early slate, and you're avoiding some of the chalk. You're avoiding other than maybe Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb on the early slate will be pretty popular. McLaurin should be too, but you're not playing this Tampa Carolina, which I think will carry that ownership. So yeah, and you hit. About a Friday. I love it. I love this lineup. This lineup makes me so happy.
Yeah, now
you didn't have to leave any money on the table.
Make sure you play it. Play it in something. Put it in somewhere.
I live in Nevada. I can't play it anywhere.
Well, give it to somebody to play. Or do something with it.
Here you are. You play it.
I already have it. I basically already have that.
Yeah, I've asked a lot of people.
We made I told you on the Friday stream, I made the notes. I'm like, I'm not going to forget this. So I made the note. Giants, Eagles, early slate, stack. So I got 4 versions of that thing going. On the early
way
slate.
Too much. We're going to put that out since, we don't want to get in trouble with DraftKings for having lineups on there. Just saying, if you just click a bunch of names, that's, what could, I'm not saying you got to play it, but there's, it's what you can do. It's what you can do. Early only slate Giants. Sean, any other tidbits? There was one tidbit I wanted you to talk about, which I don't know if you did as I stepped out for a second. Did you talk about your theory about the Seattle situation?
No, actually, I didn't.
If you could, that would be dandy.
So, yeah. So in my researching Mr. Lockett and stuff, I came across Jacob Hollips, I believe, is going to be the tight end to own in that game. I think everyone might be, flag. They might go to Greg Olsen, but Hollister out-snapped, out-targeted Olsen last week, and Wilson, and they were talking about, there's a lot of talk about Hollister should be featured this week. It's talk. I don't know, but the stats sort of do back it up. He had 7 targets, 5 catches, 60 yards. Right? No one's playing Hollister in that game, in a stack of that game. Nobody's probably playing Hollister at all in any version of anything at all, right? Because they see
$2,600. You could take Hollis, put him in cash.
It's
right. I mean, Hollister could be cash worthy this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he came out of nowhere last week. I mean, he has some he's viable. He's like, it wasn't all of a sudden where did he come from? Like, he's been playing. Snaps are there, right? So yeah, I like Hollister.
I'm with you.
I like Hollister a lot.
I put Hollister in a bunch of lineups.
I have Hollister as a few and part of my. So I have a few versions of that game stacked with no DK Metcalf, but Hollister Lockett Cup kind of scenarios. Just because no one's like.
Nice. Yeah, Hollister. I've got Hollister, and I think for a showdown, if you're playing the showdown of this, he's an interesting guy in there, so you can spend up on all the players you want to spend up on, and you throw Hollister in. I know what he costs on the showdown, but I can't imagine he's more than like $2,000, and maybe I don't have it in front of me. I'll pull that up as we're talking, but
as late slate tight end as well. Like, I love Hollister in the late slate tight end as well. Everyone's probably gonna maybe or. I mean, I want to play Gesicki so bad, but I can't. I mentally I can't. I want to click Gesicki's name, but I can't. It's killing me. It's so obvious. He should be killing it, and I don't know. Like, it's like,
Hollister. Dude, look at that, $2,000 for Hollister. Oh man, I love when I get something right. Hollister, $2,000 on the showdown slate. So I mean, there's great salary relief. You can do whatever you want with Hollister in there. You got 200, but.
You could probably run him as captain and then go Lockett, Cup, Wilson, Goff.
Yikes! Yes.
Reynolds. What's Reynolds on this? Reynolds on the showdown slate.
See, this is where Doug is stupid. I just love to shut things down on my computer, on my phone. Let's pull it back up. And see. Let's see what we got going on here. You've got Reynolds at $5,000. That's pretty expensive actually for Reynolds, but you can absolutely.
That's a little.
But you can make it work. You can make it work.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you can make so much work on this slate if you run Hollister out there at $2,000. Yeah, you can do a lot of things. If you do like, I put Goff at captain, so that's why that was so expensive. Yeah, you put anyone you want if you run Hollister out there. If you run Reynolds in a lineup, there's a lot of goodness right here.
Yeah, maybe you run Cup or Lockett as captain, and then Reynolds and Hollister, and then you could probably get Wilson. I would maybe get Wilson and Goff in there too.
I've definitely got an up here that has Robert Woods as captain. Let's see, it's got Robert Woods as captain, Everett, Goff, Hollister, Russell Wilson, Josh Reynolds, 1,400 left over, so I can move off of Everett if I wanted to. I don't even know if I'd want to. Yeah, you could do a lot of filthy things with this.
Yeah, I love Hollister, especially for that show for sure.
Yeah, that's a pretty lineup. Okay, I'm gonna get myself in trouble since I can't play them, and I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do. All right, Sean, thank you so much. And I love that piece. I'm glad that you brought that up because I think that's going to be super helpful. And I do think he, late slate, cash game lineup in any slate, showdown guy, Hollister's guy to keep track of. I had no idea he had 7 targets last week. Like, that's good digging. Good digging, my friend.
All right, guys. Good luck, everybody.
All right. Good luck today.
If you guys want to find Sean, you can find him in our Slack chat all the time, banksterdfs.com. $3.99 a week get you the Slack chat, all the sports, everything we do. Sean's he's a hockey guru. He's a dirty slot. He's got he covers everything. There's nothing Sean won't talk about. And if you're barbecuing, he's we'll just call him the moderator of the Traeger page. We posted yummy food all the time to look at. So check Sean out. Sean, take care. Good luck this week. Guys. We'll see you in chat in about an hour.
Cheers.
Bye. All right, let's see. Sam, good question. I like this question. I assume it's cash. He's got Miles Sanders. He can afford Chubb. Does he go with Chubb? I would say stay with Sanders and find another place to upgrade. And I'm going to go ahead and guess you would say the same thing since Sanders was in your cash core.
Yep, I like Sanders better than Chubb this week.
Sam, take a look and see where else you can upgrade, and throw another question in the chat, and we'll see if we can't help you find a better place to upgrade there. So we talked. Let's see. We talked about there's really no surprise actives, inactives. Robert Tunyon is active. I'm still not moving off Lewis in a showdown punt situation, but it would literally be for a showdown only slate with the punt. Because even if you're playing early only slate, I'm going Evan Ingram at tight end 100 out of 100 times on the slate. So I don't see, but really no one else prize for the actives. And there's only 5 games playing early. So not a lot of news about the late games. We're still Jerry Jeudy. That's probably the biggest one right now that we're worried about. Situation, though, he's looking like he's going to play too.
Yeah. Jeudy looks like he's going to be active. I mean, you can. It's the price that would be, maybe takes you off a little bit. But I mean, Drake is trending to play. But if something did change in pregame warmups where Drake was inactive, Edmonds could be a nice play. I mean, again, his price is a little high for my liking. But just given the matchup and projected shootout, Edmonds would be nice exposure to that game. If his
performance last week.
Yeah, no, he did not play very well. But I mean, look at the volume he got though. I mean, what is that? 28 touches.
28 touches. Sick.
I mean, listen, Miami's defense has been a little bit better than Buffalo's defense this year, which is unbelievable to say, right? But yeah, in this game, I mean, if Drake was inactive and Edmonds had, upwards of 20 touches or 25 touches again, I mean, he could pay off dramatically, especially given the other guys in his price range and all that. I mean, there's a nice pivot off of some of those guys. But again, that's only in the event that Drake is inactive, and it's hard to kind of have that flexibility at that price range for the late games with what some of the early games offer as far as the running backs in that price range too.
I'd say in that case, if you felt you wanted to play that game with Will Drake, player Edmonds in your flex, and then you've got some guys that you can play off of in the flex at $6,300. I mean, right in that game, you could flex over, you could pivot over to Christian Kirk. Let's see who else is available in the flex at around that price for 63. And we won't go over 6. We'll say you max out your lineup. Later game guys, say that your best option. I mean, you've got Waller, you've got Henderson, who I know you like. You've got Claypool, who, by the way, I think Claypool is still in play. Actually, I like Claypool more now that there's the weather because I think he's going to get some jet sweeps. I think he's the one wide receiver for Pittsburgh who's really viable, not in a cash game or anything, but if you're in a tournament lineup. I'm not totally against Claypool, but I think Kirk is at that point. If I'm pivoting off of Edmonds, if Drake, I'm looking at Judy's in play as well. I mean, there's guys you can definitely pivot down. Just make sure he's in your flex because it's pretty much going to be receivers that we're pivoting to. There's just not another running back in that range that does it. I guess you go down to Gio at 54. Again, Henderson at 59. I probably maybe rather go Gio, and then you can go up. Maybe Josh Jacobs if you have 200 extra bucks. So it's really what your lineup's looking like. That volume's ridiculous, but boy, I sat there last week sweating out cash because Chase Edmonds, who had 28 touches, couldn't get me across the line as I'm watching James Conner get 0 carries. That was we went into last week with cash. We went in looking so good at the end of the day in the afternoon, heading into the late slate of games, and then with Conner and Edmonds, and it's just like couldn't get anything. As I'm watching Kyler Murray run crazy, and it's like some of those holes to Edmonds, for the love of God, help me out.
Yeah.
But cashed anyway. Hit cashed anyway. All right, let's see. Sam came back with what he's running Jones and Miles Sanders and Mike Davis, and he's going to stay with it. Good. Yeah, I think we're in agreement that that's a very nice setup. Again, while Jones isn't in my personal cash lineup, nor is he in my cash pool. He's the one I would put into the cash pool of all the guys that aren't. So I'm comfortable, very comfortable with that. Defense, I'm most confident in for the price on FanDuel. Let me pull FanDuel up on my phone real quick.
Well, I've got it up. So I mean, I would say depending what you're looking at. I mean, we're not crazy about ever spending up too high. I mean, the Rams at 4,000 is a decent target. I mean, I'd like to see them cheaper, but it's not a terrible target at 4,000. Washington is, I think, is priced pretty well at 3,800. Yep. And if you want to look down towards the bottom, I think the Raiders at 3,500 are a decent option. Because we know how Locke likes to sling it. And, he's prone to some interceptions and all that. And, same thing, the Broncos offensive line is not great, so the Raiders could generate some pressure. So at 3,500, you could see some payoff there as well. So depending on what your lineup looks like, I think those are kind of, low, middle, higher end options there for you.
I'm definitely more willing to spend up on FanDuel on a defense than I am on DraftKings also, because FanDuel just tends to be softer all around. And when I run, again, I told you, I run my 150 lineups just as a simulation to see how it works and how it all comes together. I have no problem spending up on defense. I found it really doesn't hinder my lineups too much. I've got some lineups with Pittsburgh in there. I've got lineups with Miami in there. But if you're going to spend down, honestly, I have no problem spending all the way down to Carolina. I'll be honest with you. I've not that I don't trust Brady, but if anyone's been following the news on it, they didn't get into their hotel till almost 1 a.m. yesterday, which doesn't always affect them the way you think it. Oftentimes, especially in baseball, if there's a situation like that, it's not that day that there's the issue; it's the day after. And obviously, we don't have to worry about that in the NFL. But Tampa Bay's offense is kind of a mess a little bit right now. Listen, they could come out and score 40 today. They've got the talent. But if you're going to spend down, I say if you're going to spend 38 on Washington and you want the extra $800, Washington would be that team under 4K that I like. I don't see why not just spend all the way down, spend 3K. Get Carolina, they've scored 3-4 points a week. Even a top defense is only going to average 10-11 points on FanDuel. Now, if a team goes off and scores a touchdown, they'll score 20 some odd points. But for the most part, 4-6 points out of a defense is fine. Carolina could get there. Brady's not the most mobile quarterback in the world, and we've seen Ronald Jones fumble a lot this year. I know he's not getting the touches Fournette's getting, but I mean, I at that point it's like Dallas last week. Just spend all the way down. It's like the Jets a few weeks ago. Just spend all the way down to 3K and use that real players. I will always spend on real players before I will spend on a defense, because I mean, like Gouda and I were texting forth last weekend in Slack that we were messaging. How'd that work out last week, guys, playing $4,900 Pittsburgh Steelers defense? That worked well for everyone? It didn't. And the week before, how'd it work playing Kansas City the week before when you could have played Miami for $2,000 cheaper? Like, I was very happy last week with my $2,000 Dallas Cowboy defense, just like I am this week on DraftKings with my $2,200 Rams defense, just like I would be on FanDuel using a $3,000 Panthers. But again, I'm less concerned about spending down on defense on FanDuel. They're really soft. They're just really soft. I want to try something new this week. We didn't do this in the past. I want to pull up the current player pool. This is the pool we're working with. I was updating it like literally right before I went on the air, like at 8 West Coast, 8:29. So 11:29 in the morning, I'm sitting here frantically updating based on news and everything like that. And I feel like we're at a point where, especially on the cash side, where I'm more interested in the side, like, who do you want to stack? Where do we feel we can go with that? But on the cash side, I feel like we've got a pool that's pretty condensed, and you can put together a really strong lineup given this pool. Again, the two guys that I consider for cash on here, Aaron Jones is the one, and Robert Woods to me is if you need the $300. I have been playing him over Kupp, but I put Kupp in the cash pool simply because I trust Kupp slightly more. And if I had the $300, I do that. For those who have not looked at the pool before, if they're in bold, a preferred play. But not bold is still a cash play. And then if you go on the right-hand side, these are kind of one-offs of GPPs, the optical guys. And we're not going to be able to list every single player because, if you're stacking Miami and you wanted to give Mac Hollins, there's nothing, Jalen Guyton in that game. Fine. They're not going to make my pool, but if you're stacking a game, pretty much anyone's in play on that. These are more third plays on that. And then the ones that I'm really going to use a lot is one-offs, have the star next to them. So like I've got a lot of Aaron Jones in tournament. If I've got 5,700 left over, I'm throwing Christian Kirk in above just about anyone else at that price point. Tyler Lockett at his price point, John Brown at his price point. So I've kind of identified players like that for one-offs, and there won't always be one. Like in GPPs, I pretty stuck to the majority of my cash guys, even in tournaments. Am I missing anyone? Am I off base? Is there anything in here that I know this is the first you're looking at it today for a loop here, but is there, as we look at this pool, is there something that you see differently that you think the vast world of people watching us right now need to need to know where you're like, I feel differently here. We've aside from Aaron Jones, which we've already discussed, fine as a cash play.
I guess my biggest thing is probably on the wide receiver end. I'm very, very high on Michael Thomas in cash this week, and yeah, I don't see. Do you have him in your one-offs?
No,
I mean, obviously because he's Michael Thomas, he's viable every week regardless. But yeah,
it's one of those guys. No, pretty much deleted him as I was frantically typing and didn't put him back in the cash lineup. He's cash. He's cash for me, the cash pool. See, this is why it's like good. We get that second set of eyes. Should have probably done this by 11:30 in the morning, but hey, this is dad hashtag dad life. I got to take care of the family.
Hashtag dad life. Yeah. But yeah, no. I mean, Michael Thomas is probably a little higher on the board. I think me versus you, but we both got him as cash viable. And again, I think people are going to be scared off of him just because they're either going to just automatically have the Kamara exposure, or they're going to look at last week and say, "Oh, it's the Kamara show now. Look what he did," not taking into account how that game really played out. So I think Thomas is going to be a nice. I think he's going to be a nice play this week. Probably a little under-owned even in GPPs because if you look at where I'm just going to bring it up. But if you look at where Thomas's price is, come on, take a little time.
74. I'm pulling it up for the world here. Yep.
Oh yeah, but like at his price, with where the other options are, you're looking at at 7,400. You got Stephon Diggs, $100 more, who's going to be extremely popular. Hopkins in that same game at 7,700, Calf at 7,600. And even a little bit lower, Keenan Allen at 300 lower, Cooper Kupp at 6,900, and Robert Woods at 6,600, and Tyler Lockett at 6,500. I think that's where a lot of the GPP ownership is going to be on wide receivers. And, if you can get I personally think Michael Thomas, anytime he's under 8,000 is kind of silly. But if you can make the argument that Michael Thomas is not only going to be is cheap, but is going to be a low-owned play and could be considered a leverage play. I mean, my God, we're talking I feel like we're talking about the Chiefs last week, where you get the Chiefs under 10% owned, you got to have them stacked, and look how that turned out. Having a guy like Michael Thomas as a leverage play under $8,000, I mean, it's just an unbelievable. In my opinion, it's an unbelievable play, and a guy that more often than not you should be finding a way to get into your lineups. And the other thing that as I was making my lineups yesterday and like really getting into the final nitty gritty of it, it's incredible. I think this week there's such strong value in wide receiver that is going so under talked and under noticed because of all the value that there is in running back as well. And when you have those, and it's the way that this week is working out, when you have those running back values and you have a week where there's so many receivers priced up because they're in such fantastic matchups, you get the value wide receivers overlooked, and you get the higher priced running backs overlooked. And when you got a combination like that, I mean, the contrarian angle, the leverage angles are just staring you in the face and screaming at you. And so many people will avoid it because they'll see, Duke Johnson, 5,000 as the lead back, Mike Davis, 4,000 as the lead back. Yeah, let's put those two guys in my lineup. Now I can get Hopkins, Diggs, and Kyler Murray, and probably some passing game weapon from the Seattle Rams game. And, you're going to see so many of those combinations, which, again, you should have some exposure on that. But when you can have guys like Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, even Alvin Kamara, and some of those higher priced running backs as, under 10% owned, James Conner even, and then you can have some of the value receivers that have just as much upside as a Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf, like Jerry Jeudy, like Devontae Parker. You've got ways to have just as much upside where you're having guys that are going to be under 15 or 10% owned, where if you have a Mike Davis only goes for 10 points in a GPP lineup, even though he's only 4,000, that's hurting you. If you have DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett have one of their floor games where they're only getting you 8 or 10 points, you could be lapping the field very easily if you get the production from the running backs and the value receivers, who both of those guys that I mentioned have very strong matchups. If they go off and and some of the other value guys at the running back side are not doing as well, now you've really got one up on the field there. And I'm very, very confident in the high-priced running backs this week. It goes back, I started this trend week 1, talking about building, a lot of lineups and what you look for. And anytime you can get workhorse running backs in good matchups that are going to be a bit under-owned, anytime you can get that sort of guaranteed on the touches, you won't get guaranteed production. Nothing's ever guaranteed there. But if you can get guaranteed touches at under 10% owned, you've got a great chance to finish towards the top of the field, or at least cash and come in a nice position. So I think that's something for you guys not to overlook, and to make sure you've got enough exposure on those angles, because again, you're really changing up the lineup versus what the field may be.
Yeah, and I'm looking at kind of what we can do here, given that makeup of what you're talking about here. And look what, if you go Judy Parker and you talk to you use Sean's Buster, that's a pretty. I mean, you can fit an Aaron Jones, James Conner, Alvin Kamara, Cooper Kupp, and you're still getting high volume guys, Judy and Parker. That's depends. It is a tournament lineup, of course, because Drew Lock is definitely not a cash guy. But you've got the correlation between Lock and Judy, which I think won't be very highly owned. You go to no, you can't do it there. This is a fun lineup. This is something. And
you could. Or you could even go. You could swap Tua to Lock, and then you'd probably be able to just move Kupp to Woods to make it fit too. I think that works, right?
You could do that, or then this is where you start to play with your lineups. Maybe you're like, well, maybe I don't want Kamara in there. Maybe I like that Michael Thomas deal instead. Down. Maybe I want to get Michael Thomas, and maybe you're like, if I'm buying in on Michael Thomas, maybe you're buying in on Drew Brees. No one is going to Drew Brees today, by the way. No one. Drew Brees is going to be at 2%. This is one of those. See, I didn't get too weak. To me, GPPs felt a little more obvious, where I felt the need to kind of play within the chalk, like we talked about on Friday, the Buffalo Arizona. I got Kyler Murray, but I went with John Brown and Christian Kirk. That I worked around it. But now that we're talking a little bit, I mean, you take a look here. And you've got Breeze with Michael Thomas. You've got Judy and Parker. You've got Jones and Connor. And I just threw McLaurin in there, but I pulled him out for a second because what Gouda was talking about there was the high volume running backs. Awesome. Put in Nick Chubb. So Jones, Connor, and Chubb with Judy, Parker, Thomas. Yeah, damn, this is a good lineup. It's like, this is such a tournament-friendly lineup, and you're taking advantage of an underpriced, under-owned Michael Thomas. You're getting 3 high-volume running backs, one of whom is going to get very under-owned in James Conner. We've got that little sneaky value play Sean talked about in Hollister. Again, Judy had 14 targets last week. Judy, and as Gouda talked about on Friday, watch this kid run a route. He is one of the best route runners in the NFL right now, today. I mean, he is so pretty off the break, and he just dude knows how to play football. And if you catch the passes and Luck can get him the ball, he's going to be one of the most dominant receivers in the league for a lot of years. And Devontae Parker, I talked about yesterday on the cash game video, and Gouda talked about on Friday. When did he get good? He got good when Preston Williams got hurt last year. Well, Preston Williams is hurt again. Tua's playing decent. It's a really strong matchup. No Joey Bosa. I've got so much Devontae Parker. He's my second highest owned receiver behind Devontae Adams in tournaments. And if I felt like going through 150 lineups, I'd probably flip that. I'd probably have a lot more Devontae Parker just because he could bust this slate. I mean, if he goes in for 102, 2 touchdowns, you're talking lots of points. That's 20. That's 32 points, and that's within the realm of possibility for Devontae Parker this week. I mean, this lineup has such upside, and you play that ownership game. That's a It's a set lineup. Where's Sean to tell him to write this one down too? Like this is, but this is how to build GPPs, right? Like this is what we've been talking about. This is what the GPP videos. We talk about it every Friday. We talk about it every Sunday. It's getting that leverage to the field, and if you can get Drew Brees, Michael Thomas with leverage to the field, that's pretty amazing. I don't love Drew Brees. I call him Noodle Arm Brees all the time, but he doesn't need a high ADOT to pay off.
No.
Were you upset on Monday night if he if he had with the 222 yards and 4 touchdowns? You probably weren't for $6,000, right? $6,000, 6 times 4 is 24. So he almost 4x that number. Like that's fine. And look, I mean, for a guy who's not been playing well, 23, 24, 25, 25, 23. I mean, he's had decent games. He has for sure. But, also hasn't had Michael Thomas for the majority of the year. And so, this game is a pretty good thing we got here.
Yeah.
This is not so bad there, Gouda.
No, and listen, when you got, when Michael Thomas is in the lineup, it makes the offense very different. It doesn't necessarily make the offense more explosive. Thomas is not a guy that's going to be stretching the field, but at the same time, it's a different way that the defense needs to account for what the Saints will do. And we saw that. I mean, I don't know if that factor was, if that was really the factor last week that led to the Saints winning like that, or it was just one of those games where the Bucs, weren't ready. But either way, Thomas opens up a lot on this offense in the way that, defenses need to play against them. So there's, I think, a lot to be said when a quarterback, especially like Brees, as much as he's not struggling, but that he's obviously changed up his game a little bit and the way that he passes the ball and all that. When you get things now, it becomes a big deal that a guy like Thomas is back for this offense.
Yeah, and just because Brees isn't going for 350 and 4 touchdowns every week doesn't mean he's not a useful fantasy quarterback.
Exactly.
But he's also not priced like the guy who was throwing for 350 and 4 touchdowns a week. He's priced in that mid-range. He's priced in that Jared Goff range. Justin, he's not the top most expensive quarterback like he used to be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8th most expensive quarterback. I mean, he's very reasonably priced, and so he doesn't need to put up 40 points to pay off. 25 points is going to get.
Exactly.
Just wanted to take a moment to update weather since I just got a little weather update. Let's see, Green Bay, and this comes from the Twitter handle 1 Week Season. So I want to make sure to credit it where we got it from. Looks like Green Bay winds gusts. No, sorry, it's going to be 39 degrees, 28 mile per hour winds, gusting to 45. Yikes. Cleveland, it's going to be 24 mile per hour winds, gusting to 50 miles per hour. Oh, I'm sorry, that was 39 knots. Okay, so forget the 39 degrees. It's supposed to snow, so it's going to be under 39 degrees. So 28 wind, 45 gusts in Green Bay, 24 wind, 56 gusts in Cleveland. Now, Pittsburgh is going to be lower winds, but they have heavy gusts. I'm still avoiding the passing game there because I don't think we need the passing game in Pittsburgh. It was a nice one, especially with Cincinnati down all their cornerbacks. They were trying John Ross out at cornerback in practice this week. And because it's the Bengals, John Ross hurt himself practicing at quarterback, and he's now injured. So they just have nothing. They have nothing. And so if there was a wind, and you know what? Listen, Roethlisberger's got the arm that if he's still probably going to take some shots, but I'm just not on this slate. There's just I can't go too heavy on this Pittsburgh Cincy game in the passing game with those wins. So wind is still a factor. Don't get like you don't need to get cute again. And like I said, I feel like I'm way over leveraged on Davante Adams. If I wish I could switch all that. I wish there was an easier way if I could, play with those lineups and switch some of that to Michael, but not all of it. But it's not easy to do. And, hand build is way easier than it's. These are my problems. And, I'm using this as a therapy session, and I appreciate that. 47% Davante Adams and 0% Michael Thomas on FanDuel is starting to feel really ugly right now. Not well,
at least there, at least on FanDuel they're much closer in price where you don't feel you need to redo the entire lineup like on DraftKings.
No, it's just 4% of 150 lineups takes, I don't want to replace all of my Devontae Adams. If I could get Devontae to 20 and Thomas up to 27, I wish I could do that, but that's not going to, I don't know. That's not going to work. Let's see what I can do. Let's see what I can do as we do this together, as we work on here and we replace Devontae Adams, and maybe we'll get lucky and it'll only replace in half the lineups. Wouldn't that be nice? I'm stuck because I just feel 47% is pretty gross. Nope. It will let me replace him on every lineup. Do I do it? Do I just fade Devontae Adams?
No, I don't think you
can. One complete fade Devontae Adams? No, I think that's a mistake. I think completely fading Devontae Adams is a mistake. Yikes. What does one do? Well, can't we go in and change half of my line?
No. I mean, in comparison, I mean, I've got 50 lineups this week. I've only got Devontae Adams in 6 of them.
Yeah, I've got 70.
Yeah.
150. That's ugly, man. What am I doing?
Yeah.
Fantasy gets, but guys, this is why you have to be smart about what you're doing with your thing.
Yeah.
I changed one lineup. Woohoo! We're on it, guys. Okay, this is not.
But yeah, but I mean, also too, in the I guess disclosure part, or even my reasoning with the Devontae Adams, it's because I've actually changed a bit. I'm doing a lot of fading of both Mike Davis and Duke Johnson this week. So, like I said, if I'm not using those two value spots, well, where's the value going to come from? It's going to come from the wide receiver area, and I'm going to pay up at running backs, and that means not using Devontae Adams as much. So that's also kind of the reason that I went there.
Oh, Big Matt's smart. Big Matt's a smart dude right there. Just replace him and then go and add him back in. That's a smart move. See, I got to start listening to everyone else.
There you go.
I just like playing with this. I like playing with the whole multi-entry idea. And it's interesting that's the one who brought it up, because Matt and I talk a lot in private about multi-entry strategy. And so how do I change this? That's really smart. I can absolutely do that. And so now I've got a lot of Michael Thomas today. So I went from 0 to a lot. But the part of the reason too, and this is a good discussion to have, this is all very site dependent, because I don't think he's as great of a value on FanDuel. 8,500 is about where Michael Thomas should be, especially considering he's not it's not a PPR. And so there is some concern there that that price is a little too high. Whereas on FanDuel with the PPR, or on DraftKings with the PPR, he gets 8 catches for even 8 for 80 yards. That's right there. That's over 2x on that. He gets in the end zone. He 3x's pretty easily. So, yeah. Hold on, Matt needs some therapy too right here. Fading Green Bay is giving me anxiety. Yeah, don't fade Green Bay completely. I'm not fading Green Bay completely. I'm at 50% Aaron Jones, and I'm very comfortable with that. And I'm going to get X% of Devontae Adams, whatever, as we're talking, is how many Devontae Adams lineups I'm going to have. Because I don't think you should Devontae Adams completely, but I don't think 47% is the way to go either. So it really depends upon, where you can go with all that. And so, how else can your lineup figure? And so you just got to be smart with it. That's something no one's ever accused me of being is don't be smart. Got to be smarter there than that. But yeah, don't fade Green Bay completely. Don't fade Green Bay completely.
No,
a lot of Aaron Jones. A lot of Aaron Jones today. Jamal Williams is in play in a showdown for sure too. What else do we want to talk about? Is there a game we disagreed on? What do we bet on this week? Which game did we bet on? I feel like I gave you a total points for someone. Who did we talk about?
Oh, we did.
Who was our bet on Friday? It was.
Oh, geez.
It was 3x and a 6K guy. I feel like there was a 6K guy we were. Talking about 3x. This is terrible.
Yeah, it was Darrell Henderson.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I have way more Henderson than I should.
Yeah, you didn't even want to give me. You felt bad giving me 15 points.
I'm going to give you 3x on that. 15. Yeah. So we're talking about Henderson. You want to talk about a little more about Henderson for people who didn't see us on Friday?
Yeah. So my view on Henderson. One, the we know this story with Seattle's defense and just how bad they are. The Rams' offensive line has improved as the season's gone along. They've been better than they were last year. It's clear Henderson's become the lead back there. Akers has disappointed as a rookie, which actually there's a little bit of a theme there with Akers and the rookie running backs in general. Henderson had the same problem last year. The rookies have a really, really tough time of picking up the playbooks and really being able to become a big part of the offense in their first year. I've actually seen the same thing with Van Jefferson at wide receiver. Everybody thought he'd come in and overtake Josh Reynolds pretty easily, and Van Jefferson's been like nowhere to be found except for one game this year where he had a couple of catches. With that, Henderson has taken over. Malcolm Brown just a change of pace, maybe goal line back type of guy, a little bit more of a grinder there. And if you look in, Seattle has not done much in allowing. They haven't allowed a lot of rushing yards this year. But if you actually look into why that is or what it is, well, first we know Seattle is putting up just insane amount of points this year every game, so kind of taking the run game out for most teams. And a little bit further into that, well, they've only really played 2 stout running backs this year, or even running games this year, I would say. That was against the Cowboys. Back when they still had Dak, and Zeke did not do too much in that game as the Cowboys, the passing game was just working perfectly in that one. And the Minnesota Vikings, where Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison, really torched them on the ground. And the Rams have been much more of a running team this year than a passing game, which, even there gives me a little concern on what type of passing volume might the Rams have if they are able to play their game that they want. And let's not forget, Russell Wilson has thrown an interception in all but 2 games this year. He gets sacked quite a bit. The Seahawks offensive line leaves a lot to be desired. And the Rams defensive line and pass rush, is a top 5 unit in the NFL. They're generating, tons of pressure. They're getting tons of sack. When you got a guy like Aaron Donald, that could disrupt things a little bit. And I think that all plays very well into Darrell Henderson's hands. And again, at $5,900, not only is he going to be low owned, I mean, you're hard pressed to find anything where, he may even be 5% owned, let alone over 10% owned. Again, given the guys that are in his price range, if you got the 2 main chalk guys in Duke Johnson and Mike Davis below him. Plus, you've also got Gio Bernard, who's about $600 cheaper than him as well, that people may look to as a pivot off of Duke Johnson potentially. So you've got a nice, contrarian play there. And, this is one of those plays that, we spoke about it in a couple of different weeks where we've had that opportunity to be contrarian on a really high end game. It's not out of the realm of possibility even to stack Seattle's passing game and have it a bring back with Darrell Henderson only. Because again, if the Rams can play their game and Henderson really gets the volume and gets some strong, puts up some strong numbers, if Seattle's playing catch up, that's the story that you're looking for there. And I do see a way on that. In Seattle, even though it's not a time zone change, Seattle just a lot of times is not the same team on the road. And, with something like that, again, if they get off to a slow start, the Rams are up 14-0 early on, becomes a Darrell Henderson game with Russell Wilson trying to play catch up there. And, you could be ahead of the field with something as easy as just making that type of pivot on a popular stack.
And listen, there's no one that works with us that is more into the lever play than you are. Like, you've been keyed in on that all year long, and you've been right a lot more than you've been wrong. You've been right on the leverage play is that you've been able to shift off of the chalkier play. You've been able to shift off what everyone else is doing, and you've been very comfortable in making those pivots onto the plays that people might not necessarily be owning. And I think that's really, really a smart move to do, especially if you're playing a lot of lineups. If you're playing a lot of lineups, it makes a lot of sense to move off of the chalk play, right? And people in this game are going to be playing that passing game. I know I am. I got a lot of passing game, but it made a lot of sense when Gudu got it the other day on Friday night to go to Henderson. So he was not in my player pool at all. Still might not be there. Not sure if I put him in there. I didn't. I probably should for people looking at the last minute here. I've got him, though, in quite a few lineups, 10, 12% of my lineups, simply because if this game does go the way that that Gouda says it does, then, or that it could, not that it will, but that it could, then Henderson's going to be that. It's just a great leverage play, and that makes a lot of sense to me. So I want to thank you for that, Gouda, for helping me make those changes and seeing past what the group think and what the world would seem to say, and moving into a play that's going to help me get someone. I think that's one of the things that's great about having more than one of us sharing our ideas on here, because if it was just me, we have our tunnel visions, we have our plays, we want to defend our plays, and everyone does it, right? Matthew Berry, one of the things he says every year, I can make the stats say what I want it to, I can tell the story that I want to tell that fits my narrative, and we all have our own narratives. And having multiple eyes on this, having a team of people that are here to give you multiple perspectives is a wonderful thing. The worst thing you want is to come to a site like ours and have everyone say the exact same thing. That's not going to help you get that perspective, and it's not going to help you become a better player, and it's not going to help you see where the rest of the world is. Because if 5 of us are saying one thing and then one of us is saying something different, well, that something different could be the leverage you're looking for, because that right there, that's a small sample size, but there's that percentage, right? You've got 84% of the field saying one thing and 16% saying the other thing. Do what the other guy's doing, especially if it's a delay. And it's not like it's not like Gouda's saying, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to play, I don't know, just pill a random name, Travis Homer, 8% Travis Homer. Let's do it, right? Like, we're not doing that. Like, he's like running game in the game where the Rams might get up and start running. Oh, that makes a lot of sense against the Seattle team that's terrible on defense. So I think that kind of different perspective is great. And so that's where it's not like any of us are the end-all be-all. It's the collective, which really I appreciate that perspective. And I hope those of you who are listening and who are members or prospective members understand that that's where we're coming from here at Bankster. We like the shared thoughts, and shoot, we love it with our members too. We listen to a lot of our members. We've got a number of members who share their thoughts and have different perspectives. And if you're part of our baseball Slack chat, you see one of our members, John, you can find him on, he's there, and he was very heavily involved during the playoffs, throwing his ideas out there, and he has a completely different perspective on things. And he goes heavy relievers on showdown baseball slates or 2-game baseball slates, which we're all like, that's crazy. Except John makes a lot of money doing it. And John's a really smart dude. So, we took our group think and we're like, that's not right. But you got that one different perspective. I was like, ooh, maybe that makes some sense. It got to the point where members are like, John, who's your reliever today? John, who do we got? John, who do we got? And you, by the way, will be able to find John contributing during the baseball season, because he's going to join the team as part of our baseball coverage starting in 2021. Because why not? Why not take that great idea and then give him a role? That's what we do. That's how Gouda joined the staff. He was like, hey, I got some ideas on best ball. Can I throw some ideas your way? And then that worked really well. And
yeah, there we are.
Now look at him. Every week he gets to share his thoughts with the world on YouTube. And I guess that was a lengthy promo for Bankster DFS. It's 99 cents a week, by the way. BanksterDFS.com/subscribe. You get everything. And it's not just this one sport. We cover them all. Baseball, football, basketball, hockey, soccer, niche sports, college sports, NASCAR, golf, MMA, all of it. Wrestling. Didn't realize Gouda was a big wrestling fan. Who knows? Maybe next week Gouda and I'll do maybe next week we'll do a Survivor Series podcast. That sounds like something we might be able to do next week. Prediction show. I don't know. I'm throwing this on you pretty late in the game there, Gouda. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see if we can throw it. We've done wrestling stuff before. Maybe we'll do a wrestling podcast. We do sports card collecting, sports betting. We got it all. $3.99 a week, Bankster DFS.
Yeah. There's been one news item that's come out over the past 15 minutes. It's on DeAndre Swift. No, nothing bad. It's interesting. Actually, could be a good thing. They're saying that Tom Pelissero from NFL Network is saying that Detroit plans on having Swift lead the way, and that he'll be the starter and the main guy. So if they're finally fade out, the Adrian Petersons and Kerryon Johnson, and if they're going to give Swift 75% of the snaps and 60 to 70% of the touches, he could be a nice one-off at the running back position. And again, look at where he's priced. He's at $5,100. That could be an absolute fantastic pivot off of Duke Johnson at 5,000. You get that same. You get potentially the same amount of opportunities. A game that Detroit, this probably is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring game because Washington's offense is not that good, but that's always a good thing for running backs. If Detroit has the lead or can take advantage of Washington's poor offense, that could make it stronger for Swift. And again, if you can get, the same price point and same potential for a third of the ownership of what Duke might carry, it's a great play. And he should have, he definitely would have been in the pool before this, but now with this news, maybe bump him up slightly if you're still kind of tinkering with your lineups or making some changes, or even if you've got Duke 30% in your lineups, maybe take 10% of them, take 10 of the lineups or however many you have, and just swap them to DeAndre Swift at that same price point.
And I've got Swift, on my 150 lineups. He is behind Aaron Jones, my second most owned running back in tournaments. I think I got him like 20%, and I'm, comfortable with that number. If I could go back now knowing that news, I probably would bump him up to 30% because I just think he's got such a high upside. I do think this game scores a little bit higher than Gouda does. I like the game, and for me, Swift was the natural run back for me with the I've got McLaurin. If I'm going to run McLaurin in a tournament, I've been running Swift as the run back play for me on that. More so than Hawkinson or Amendola, and surely more so than Marvin Jones, who I don't particularly love this week. 4-touchdown game incoming now, of course, because whenever I talk bad about a player in the last 3 or 4 minutes of a show, they do great. But I do like Swift. And one note for tonight, I know it's not on the main slate, but word out of Baltimore, in New England, but out of the Baltimore camp, similar to Swift, it looks like J.K. Dobbins is going to get the lion's share of the work, is what they're saying. They want to get him much more heavily involved in the offense. They want to let him sort of lead the way too. So between Swift and Dobbins, something to think about for showdown tonight. I know my showdown slate for tonight, I already have Dobbins in there, and I feel really good about that now. So, he's a real high upside guy, pass catcher. Love it on a team that's just they should roll New England tonight. 6.5 points, by the way. Baltimore minus 6.5. That's a really good number if you can still get that. Take that number. Nice. I'd also probably bet the under on that game. I don't know what the total is, but whatever it is, I'm going to take the under. Nobody's doing anything. Gouda, any other last words of wisdom before we log on out of here for the night, for the day, the morning?
No, I've said my piece today. I got nothing. I got nothing additional right now.
All right, guys. Hey, don't forget to go over to YouTube, look up my name, Doug Shane, and you can find us there. For all of our videos, we post a couple of videos throughout the week. We're live every Friday afternoon at 7 o'clock Eastern, afternoon on the West Coast, evening on the East Coast, 11:30, every Saturday morning before lock, or Sunday morning. Sunday morning. Losing my head. I'm getting old. Sunday mornings, we're here live before lock. And again, multiple videos throughout the week. Just look up Doug Shane on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, click that notification icon so you know when we get the new videos. BanksterDFS.com, $3.99 a week, get you everything. Guys, I cannot wait to see the green screens. Make sure you tag me on Twitter at Bankster17. Go post them in the Bankster members only Slack chat NFL page. My favorite part of the week is when the games end and I just scroll through green screens for 30 minutes and we all celebrate each other. It is phenomenal for the Big Gouda, Michael Gudadero, and for Sean Goodwin, who was here for his dirty slot page. And for the rest of Team Bankster, I'm Doug Shane, Bankster17 on Twitter, BanksterDFS.